just before the Korean War, I was stationed on a submarine, the USS Pickerel, SS 524, stationed in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. And the Navy scheduled some exercises with the British Navy to be out in the South China Sea near the Philippine Islands, not real close to them, but in that direction between there and Hong Kong, I believe is where the South China Sea is. And we went out there to have the sonar exercise with the British. On the way, we stopped at the Mariana Islands.
Yes.
There's a little cove, and we went in there, and we were ahead of schedule, so the skipper had the submarine,
Off of the main highway where
and so we could go swimming on one side, and on the other side they had a carbine you could for shark watch, and we stayed there, and that was the islands. That was the islands where Enola Gay, the aircraft that dropped the bombs on in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that's where they flew off from, one of those islands. But the one we stopped at was one of the Mariana Islands that wasn't inhabited. And we stayed there for a while. And one of the interesting things that happened there was
it was a grocery store. It was kind of up on the hill.
We were all out swimming and diving off the sail and enjoying ourselves. And somebody yelled, "Shark, shark." And the man that was on the port side with the carbine came over to the starboard side, and everybody got out of the water, and we saw, and here we watched this. The water was very clear, and we watched this shadow, underwater shadow, coming towards us. Just coming, he was aiming with that carbine toward that shadow, and about 20 yards out from the sub, one of our shipmates surfaced. And he was a good swimmer, and he'd gone way out to see how far he could swim underwater, see if he could come back to the sub underwater. And no one had known that he'd done that. And the man that had the carbine, I think, was more shook up about it than the one that was underwater, because he thought about how he could have shot his shipmate. But we decided after that if you're swimming out in the ocean, it's a good idea to have a buddy system going. We went on out and had to exercise with the English sailors, and then went into Manila Bay. We saw some ships went into the Manila Bay that we'd never seen before or heard of, that had been sunk. They were Japanese ships that had been sunk right beside the channel. And they were not in the channel, but they were on the side, and they were not completely. The superstructure was still above water, and they were concrete ships. And I had not known before that there was such a thing as concrete ships. But since then, when I looked it up on the internet, and the U.S. Navy experimented with concrete ships. But anyway, Manila Bay, and then went around by Corregidor and went to Olongapu. And Olongapu we saw a bunch of sailors there that had been in exercise with us, playing water polo and such things like that. And in history, you can look and you find that that's where the Japanese had the death ships come, and where they transported some U.S. prisoners of war by ships that were launched at Manila Bay, not Manila Bay, along San Lee Point, I believe they call it. But anyway, from there, we were we thought we were coming home, and the skipper said,
I remember seeing.
no, we had another exercise we were going to do that, and we learned then that he and a skipper from the East Coast on another submarine had a $20 bet on which one could have the steepest up angle. And the skipper from I believe the USS Amberjack on the east station on the East Coast had come up at something like 43 degrees. And so our skipper said he was going, before we came back, we were going to exceed that 43 degrees. So they announced off for all of us to rig the ship for a steep angle and lash down all loose gear. They tied down the pots and pans in the kitchen and things of that sort. But he decided that he determined he was going to start the dive. He was going to start the exercise from 250 feet at flank speed. And flank speed is what you call wide open. It's as fast as you can go. And we were on the Guppy Snorkel submarine, which could almost go as rapid as fast as, twice as fast as fleet type submarine during World War II. And the reason for that was because they had developed a new type battery that was half the weight with twice the power, which was, I believe it was a NICAD battery. So we had NICAD battery and we had more power. And we could go roughly 20 knots underwater, and that's just about twice as what they did during World War II. We what in preparation for the surface for the exercise, our skipper had communicated with the skipper of another submarine and asked them to be ready for us, to watch for us as we surfaced and take a picture of us when we came up. So they had an 8mm movie camera, and they were going to take pictures as we came up. They didn't know where we would come up, but they knew the general direction. As once again, as we started in preparation for coming up, and just as the submarine has a bow and stern planes, which controls the angle of the ascent or descent, and so the order of operation was blow bow buoyancy, and blow negative. That's the two tanks that's up forward. When they say blow them, that means put high pressure air in it and blow the water out so they're as light as possible. And then at the highest speed possible, at 250 feet, put hard rise on the bow and stern planes. Well, and then we sent by sonar. This was prearranged to send to the other submarine that was going to take the pictures, execute, and then we started up. And when we started up, the planes, of course, at hard rise was causing it to come up at an angle. It being lightweight in the front caused it to come up. But if you think about it, the speed on the hull of on the keel on the bottom of the sub was also a plane, and the longer you held that angle, the steeper it got. But they couldn't back off the angle on the bow planes because the bow plane pressure, 600 pounds per square inch of hydraulic pressure that controlled the bow planes, was less than the pressure of the water on the outside, and so they were froze on hard rise. And in the meantime, that was getting steeper and steeper. And when we broke the bow, bow broke the surface, it just kept on going until it became dead weight. And when it became dead weight, instead of flopping down like a boat or a ship normally would in rough waters, it came down this way. The other sub that watched us that took the pictures, they radioed back to Pearl Harbor, Comsub Pack, that Pickerel was in trouble. Because if we'd have lost the bubble, that under the, with open bottom tanks, the ballast tanks, if we'd have lost the bubble, of course, you're going to sink. And when we went back under, they didn't know how badly, how bad the damage was, or if there was damage. Well, we lost mercury out of the master gyro. The mattresses came off the bunks. If you think about it, when you pass a 45-degree angle and you standing on the deck, it becomes easier to stand on the deck, bulkhead than it is the deck. But anyway, when they took a movie of it, some of the crew members, enterprising young men, had come up there with their still cameras, and they took pictures too. And one of them turned out that they got it almost at the peak, 60 degrees. And incidentally, the reason we know that we came up at 71 degrees, they showed us that film, and they measured. I don't know how accurate, but they measured the angle.
71 degrees.
They measured the angle with on the movie, and that's what they officially. I say officially. It never went out official throughout the Navy, but on board the officers, that's what they officially told us. We came up at 71 degrees. Like I said, we didn't flop back down. It was over 100 feet in the air and dead weight, and it went back down. It went way down. And the damage was slight, really, what it could be, because mercury out of the gyro, sure, that had something to do with navigation, but if you recall, this was a submarine that had batteries full of sulfuric acid, and if the sulfuric acid had come out and mixed with salt water, and there's just about always salt water in the bilges of a ship. Maybe not much, but there's usually always some. And if it had mixed, it would have produced a gas that would have been poison, and it could have asphyxiated everyone. But that's pretty much the story of. Oh, one more thing. I think since this was 65 years ago in 1950, 68 years ago, I can say this. Of course, any communications from the skipper is going to be need to know, confidential. It's not it's not general knowledge. But the radioman that was on duty at the time was a radioman Coleman, and he was a good friend of mine, and we were in the same department, electronics department. And he told me that when the other submarine radioed Comsub Pack radioed our skipper and said, and when they found out that we were back on the surface and stable, he said, since, and I'm almost perfect, this is almost a perfect quote, I believe. He showed me the message. It said, since most skippers conduct their ISE, and ISEs means individual ship exercises. Since most skippers operate their ISE at 15 degrees or less, recommend you limit yours to 25. But anyway, the next thing we certainly thought we were coming home then, but the next thing that happened was he told us that he got permission to snorkel back up to Hawaii. Well, they had developed a submarine where the engines could operate underwater by using a snorkel, but it was pretty much still experimental, and most of the operation had been alongside the dock, or very short distances. But we had gone into Hong Kong Harbor. They call it Victoria Harbor, but Hong Kong Harbor, and when we left there, he had got permission. So when we left Hong Kong Harbor, we dived, and we stayed underwater. A storm came up. We hit a storm, and the request was made to the skipper to, were we going to come up? He said no. We're snorkeling we're snorkeling to Honolulu. So the sea, when a rough sea is no problem for a submarine. They can go deep and it's as calm as it can be, no problem. But right at the snorkel depth, which is about 64 feet, you're part up and part down. It's the roughest place it can be, and the shroud, and one of them come off on the right. You could tell right quick it came off on the right, because that water would catch the plate on the inside and it would pull it, and you'd have to hold 5 or 10 degrees rudder on it to stay on course. And then after a while, the other one would come off on the other side. It would level. You come back on course, and then the other side. And by the time we got to Pearl Harbor, we didn't have any cheating around the conning tower. It was gone, and they learned something from that, because that cheating was put on by rivets, and I don't know what they did after that, but we had to go in a overhaul when we got back to the shipyard, and they overhauled and rebuilt that. But the interesting thing, another interesting thing, one of those plates, one of our antennas was anchored to one of those plates, and when that plate went off, it jerked the antenna off, and we didn't have any long-range antenna. We didn't have any long-range method of communication. We had a short range, but not long range. They had we had what they call an underwater antenna that was a direction finder, like, and it was substantial enough that it didn't break down, but it was short range. So it was, and with a damaged master gyro, because we'd lost mercury, couldn't count on that, and so you couldn't. And with they have what is called celestial navigation, where you can use a sextant and shoot the stars. But to do that in rough water through the periscope is unthinkable, really. So what we had also what they call LORAN, which is long range navigation system, which is, I think it was that underwater loop where you can do that, and like they have, you've seen in police cars or scanners or something. It was probably that, because when they interviewed the skipper when we got back to Pearl Harbor, and he was asked how he navigated, he said he used it in LORAN. So that's what I'm pretty sure that's the way we did it, was with that underwater loop. But the skipper was bound and determined. He's dead and gone now, but I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I'm just trying to tell it like it is. He wanted the credit of doing that long range underwater. He did not want to. I don't mean he said that, but you could tell from. You see, we had orders that 8 o'clock every night we were supposed to radio in a position where we were. to Pearl Harbor, comes up back. And they call that 8 o'clock posit. 8 o'clock, letting them know what position. So after that storm was going for a while, he had the radioman radio in that this may be our last 8 o'clock posit communication because we lost that. Some of the antennas looked like we're losing the rest or something to that effect. And they radioed back and said, if you can't radio in, bear with me, you know I'm paraphrasing. If you can't radio in your 8 o'clock posit, surface and come on in. He had the radioman refuse to reply to that order, as if he'd never received it. And that was my friend Coleman, and I know he's told the truth, because we didn't surface and come in. So we kept coming, and my position as an electronic technician was usually on radar or sonar, depending on whether it was surface or not. And I picked up some targets on the radar, and it was aircraft. And when we got in, we learned that they were searching for us. They thought the submarine had been lost, and they were searching. Well, we got close enough that we could communicate first we got close enough that we could pick up the islands with the radar. And we saw that we were about 90 miles off course, headed for the big island instead of for Honolulu. But that wasn't bad, considering no more navigation system than we had. And so we went on in and got close to the Oahu, Pearl Harbor, and had radio communication. And of course, military being military, they want to make a good show of anything spectacular. And when we radioed in, they said, don't come in. It's too late in the afternoon. We want the dignitaries here. Stay out overnight. Come in the morning about 10 o'clock. We'll have all the dignitaries here. So after being gone underwater 20 days, we had to circle the island for all night till we could till we had permission to come in the harbor. I mentioned this out of jest. In the Navy, there's such a thing as channel fever. It's not very well known anywhere except the Navy. And channel fever is simply people who've been out to sea for a while. When they start heading toward the channel, they know they're coming home. That last night, you can't sleep. You just walking the deck, you know. And so I like to think that the only and the best cure for channel fever is instant cure. Is when your foot hits the ground after you dock. No more channel fever. Oh, this is
that picture.
This picture is not the picture of the 71 degree angle.